All right, JAG University, Ozzie, I'm taking notes. I feel like we're all in on the health insurance, employee benefits mantra, right? Since we started officially doing this together.
Correct.
The one thing I'm confused about, and I still need to learn about, is what's a gap plan?
Right, so a gap insurance is a supplement plan. A lot of people confuse it as a secondary insurance, but you still have your primary medical plan. The gap is a secondary line that can be either employer paid or voluntary. The interesting part about it is that they're fully customizable. So for example, if you have a $1,500 deductible, do you have co-insurance or do you not? If you don't, let's say your benefits read 100%. You get admitted to the hospital, you know you're gonna have a $1,500 bill, it's 100% after your deductible. You have an outpatient surgery, similar situation, 100% after your deductible. If you have a gap plan that covers both $1,500, both inpatient and outpatient, those are two separate buckets of money. Whether you have an inpatient setting situation that you get admitted to the hospital, you're going to end up giving both ID cards, your medical plan card, and your gap card.
So is gap related to more from a deductible reimbursement, or is it more coverage based?
It's more deductible reimbursement or copay reimbursement, depending on how we structure it.
So give me the reason why those plans exist.
So they're there for employers, especially in South Florida. Everybody's cost conscious. So people decided to move away from the really low $1,000 deductibles, $500 deductibles up to $5,000. But then you buy a $5,000 gap because the cost savings on the medical plan for having the higher deductible versus the lower
Outweigh the difference?
outweigh the difference.
So I mean, so that's kind of the norm,
Yeah.
right? So see, I thought the gap, and as far as just gaps in general, right, was not more coverage based, but it's really deductible, co-insurance, as far as the reimbursement side of it.
Correct.
Now that's been the norm. That's kind of the norm down here in South Florida. I mean, I know we see South Florida move a little bit faster, I think, than most people. I mean, that's obviously I'm biased, right? Been down here for 20 plus years. But as far as the gap, is that where you see a lot of employers? It's a flexibility play.
Of course.
So it's both flexibility, but also financially helping them save money on the monthly line.
Correct. Like we have a client right now that they have three plans. They have a $5,000 deductible, they have a $3,000 deductible, and they have a $1,000 deductible. They offer three voluntary gaps. So basically, they're not contributing to the gap, but they're contributing to the medical plan, and they're letting their employee decide, do you want to purchase an additional line? And it's basically, it all depends. Every employee is different. When you have a lot of young employees, they think they're invincible and that they're not going to need it.
Sure. They do bounce back quicker.
Yeah, they do.
At this point, at 40, everything hurts.
Everything. Once you hit like 35, it starts hurting.
Yeah.
But
I feel you.
what the gap does is the gap's going to be there to reimburse you in those situations. Like something common, you have appendicitis. You go have emergency appendix surgery. Well, the gap's there. You're not paying your deductible. The gap's paying it. The gap's there to help you pay your bill directly to the hospital, depending on how you structure the plan.
So that's obviously something you have to present, like you mentioned, at the time of the claim.
Correct.
Not post-claim.
You could do it post-claim, but it's cleaner to do it, to present the ID card at the day of service. That way they can build that secondary plan directly.
I mean, are there any downsides to having a gap plan?
Yes, there are actually. Depending on the size of group, if you have more than 50 employees, there is some downside because those groups are claims driven. So they go through traditional claims underwriting. So if you're under 50, there is no claims. It's basically demographic driven.
So that's where you see a little bit of that's where you see more of you being creative, right?
Correct.
As far as the bottom line.
Yeah, you don't want to promote overusage of the gap either, because if you have a gap that covers everything, then people don't care to make the distinction versus going to ER or going to urgent care,
right?
Because somebody else is paying the bill.
Correct. So that's kind of the conversations you have to have up front, depending on the group size, with the employer and or employees, right?
Correct.
What is kind of the game plan?
So you do that during the enrollment meeting. It's mainly an educational piece. You have to teach them the benefits of using the plans correctly on both sides. Because let's say you go to ER, well, you're eating up your outpatient benefit more than you need to. Because if you go to ER and then all of a sudden you have an outpatient surgery, you ate up a big piece of your benefit going to ER, and now you have a hole in your gap coverage for the outpatient surgery.
It's interesting how so much of it is the upfront education in order to implement the plan. Because you as an employer could have and offer the best product, right? But unless you're able to digest it, explain it, and then be diverse enough, that's where the problems come later on, where some of the employees didn't know the deductible went to $5,000, right?
Correct.
And that the gap plan, that's the reason why that was quote unquote offered. So interesting how so much education as far as the health side, when the time of a claim is, that's where we kind of come through.
And one of the other things too, people don't understand that when those things come about, then the employee's like, oh, why didn't I get that? No one told me about it. Well, you were told, here's your signature. You either took it or declined it.
It's just health insurance. And look, and I'm in the business, right? P&C for a while, but I think you would pull a lot of people, and most people don't fully understand it. Not for anything, but insurance could be very technical. But I think just the speed of the enrollment process sometimes goes over everyone's head. Correct. They kind of focus on what's it going to cost me monthly, depending on what the contributions are, right, from your employer. That's the main focus, not the after effect. And I think everybody thinks they're invincible.
No, that's for sure. Everyone thinks you're Superman.
Yeah, I know I used to until I got 40.
No, you just think you're Batman.
Now I'm Batman. But it's interesting, as far as gap plan, it's one of those things where, again, to kind of recap, it's based on the reimbursement basis for your deductible and your co-insurance, not gaps in actual coverage itself.
Correct. So the gaps in coverages really don't exist because all plans have an out-of-pocket. So what your worst case scenario is from day one. So your out-of-pocket is literally what it means. The maximum you could spend in a calendar year out of your own pocket. So you could structure the gap to cover your deductible and let you reach the out-of-pocket via the copay or co-insurance side, or you could have it to cover more. Some clients like to cover their full out-of-pocket. It all depends. But the most important thing about having the gap is using it the right way. So you have to really educate the client and the consumer on what to do and how to use it properly.
Appreciate that.